chocolate. So what I want to introduce to you now is what's called a cluster. A cluster is the easiest way of doing anything confectionery. A cluster is what you see at confectionery store, like a coconut haystack. It's a peanut cluster. It's anything that they're really sold by the pound. At the hotel I used to work at, we would do peanut clusters or these English crisps. We would put them on Sunday brunch because anytime someone sees chocolate on a Sunday brunch, they think they're getting their money's worth. It's kind of like seeing seafood on a brunch. People go crazy for it. So a coconut haystack or any type of cluster is where you have a bulk ingredient. So this is just nothing more than toasted sweetened coconut, and then I'm going to add tempered chocolate to it. And to turn it into a cluster, I just stir it, and then I portion it out very much like you portion out a cookie. I could use an ice cream scoop. I could use 2 spoons, which is what I'm going to do, because then I think you get a little bit more of an artisan look than just doing an ice cream scoop. So what we want to make sure, one, is that we work quickly, because remember my chocolate is in temper. So I don't want my cluster to start to set up in the mixing bowl. If it did, of course I could hit it with my heat gun or my hair dryer just to warm it up a little bit. So you can see all my coconut is moistened with the chocolate. I don't want to see a pool of chocolate because then it makes the cluster very hard to bite into. So I'm going to take 2 spoons, and when you do a cluster, what we want to start to think about is we don't want it too big that it takes more than 2 to 3 bites to eat it. So if I was doing a buffet, this would be the size of the cluster that I'm going to do. But if you go to Long Grove Confectionery or you go to anyone that sells them by the pound, guess what size you're going to get? You're going to get them about that size, because one now is going to cost about $5 as opposed to this guy, which might cost $2. So when they're sold by the pound, they know they're going to make more money if they make the clusters bigger. Now, when we start to do anything confectionery, we need to start to realize how to store these. Chocolate and refrigeration do not like each other, and that's because cocoa butter does not like moisture, because remember, chocolate does not have any water in it at all, and we'll start to get what's called bloom. So we need to store these out of direct sunlight, because then we'll get what's called sugar bloom, and that's when the sugar in the chocolate rises to the surface. And blooming is where the chocolate starts to get a grayish color. It's okay to eat, but it's just not very pretty to look at. So we store these out of direct sunlight. We try to store them, perfect temperature is about 65 degrees. So sometimes on a very hot day, like July when it's in the hundreds, try not to really buy a lot of chocolate, because what happens by the time you get it home in your car is going to be, 110 degrees when you first open it. Your chocolate is going to start to melt, and you're going to get blooming when you put it in the cooler, because you want to set it back up, and then the chocolate is not going to be what it should be. When it's really, really warm and really humid, confectionery shops usually put a sign on the door that said, please keep door closed, because they need to keep the air conditioner running, because air conditioners pull out humidity, and humidity is moisture. So you'll see them try to control how quickly you walk in and out of the door in the confectionery shops, just because they want to maintain the perfect quality of their chocolate. So this is my first cluster, and again, this is the size that we would do for buffets. And you can see it's actually starting to set up. These clusters take a little bit longer to set up than it does checking for temper, because we have an inclusion in it. So these might take 15 to 20 minutes to completely set up, because we're dealing with other ingredients, so the chocolate isn't just by itself. And this and peanut clusters are the easiest to do. You just want to make sure that you toast your peanuts a little bit before you do it. We're going to do, when we get to our candy bars, we're going to do what's called a Mendiant candy bar, and that's just a chocolate slab that has dried fruit and it has toasted nuts. We could even do some dragées, which we're going to learn in a couple days to sprinkle on, because our candy bars are our very last section before we start finals. So we know how to do a marshmallow, we know how to do beautiful caramel again, we know how to do what's called a dragée. So we sprinkle all of those inside of our candy bar. So it's pretty cool. We end with one of the most fun sections, which is the candy bar section. So this, guys, if I was in a real hurry, say my Sunday brunch, instead of 100 people, now I have 300 people at the door because they're just walk-ins. This is one of the fastest ways to get product out on the buffet line. So if I did this, and you know, my chef is looking at me like, come on, Steph, I need food out there. I could put these in the cooler, no more than 5 minutes. The chocolate will set up, and then I could put them on a platter and they could go out. Remember, great for buffets, or you sell them by the pound, and then you know, one is always a bigger portion than the smaller one if I was going by the pound, okay? So this is just a very simple cluster where there's only one ingredient. Now I wanted to talk to you about what's called an English crisp. An English crisp has multiple ingredients or multiple inclusions in it. And the classic English crisp is going to have some type of cereal. Normally it's Rice Krispies or it's Frosted Flakes. It's going to have a nut in it, and it's going to have a piece of dried fruit. So we get crispness with the cereal, we get a little crunch, and we get saltiness with the nuts, and we get a nice little chew from dried pieces of fruit. So we're going to do both of these today. We're going to do the coconut haystack, and we're going to do this English crisp. So what I've done so far is I've chopped my dried cherries. You could do apricots, which are very pretty. You could do dried blueberries. You could do dark and golden raisins. That's up to you. We're going to do dried cherries, but they're quite large, so I went ahead and I chopped these. Now we're going to use peanuts. You could use cashews. You could use pecans, macadamia nuts, whatever you'd like, but we need to saute them. We need to crisp them up. So I went ahead and did some beurre noir. We know that from Baking Fundamentals too. That's just brown butter. I sauteed the nuts in them, and then I put a little sea salt on them. So I get sweet and I get salty, I get crunch. So this is actually almost perfect cluster because you'll get a lot of texture when you're eating it. So I just have gone ahead and tossed these. I'm again just gonna stir in my chocolate. By the time we do this, we're coming back from lunch, so I'm gonna have you check your chocolate for temper, make sure that it's good. Just like the coconut haystacks, we're gonna stir just enough chocolate to act as glue. Now, most people with the clusters, they prefer milk chocolate because it's a bit on the sweeter side. You could easily do dark chocolate, you could do white chocolate. The key is, again, just make sure everything is in temper. So you can see I've got it almost all moistened, but I am going to put in just a little bit more chocolate, just because when you're eating an English crisp or a coconut haystack, you don't want to have any dry pieces. So again, here we go. Once it is completely coated, just like the coconut haystacks, we need to work quickly because we don't want the chocolate to set up. But what do we do if it sets up? Do we remember? We hit it with the heat gun, or we hit it with our hair dryer. Okay. If that starts to happen, you could easily put this over a hot water bath if you don't have any type of heat element. So just make sure though that put a thermometer in and don't let it go over the hot water bath for more than about 3 minutes. So we don't want to go over 95 degrees. Remember, if we go over 95, we have thrown Beta Crystal 5 out of temper, and then we would actually have to throw these out because they will never set up completely, okay? And this takes me back, because you know I always like to review our goals of tempering: shine to the chocolate, snap so that when I bite into something I actually hear the crunch, and I need it to contract when we do our bonbons, which we're going to learn the day after we do truffles. So our game plan is to do these English crisp today. Then we'll come back and we learn how to do a truffle, and then we come back and learn how to do our bonbons. Bonbons are just very fancy molded chocolates. So I'm just going to finish doing these guys, and at the end I'll put these on a platter and you can see what our English crisp will look like. Now look, our haystacks, I can almost touch these, so they're really firming up, and it hasn't even been 15 minutes yet. So these will be great to pick up, and then I'll have my English crisp, okay? But remember, if after lunch you did milk chocolate for your coconut haystack and you want to do dark chocolate for your English crisp, just swap out with someone else's chocolate. So if someone did milk, you did dark, just swap out the chocolates, but make sure that it's in temper, because it will sit over the heater over lunchtime. We don't want it to get too hot. We don't want it to dip down too cool. Okay? So we'll come back and check these in about an hour.